Hey everyone, Lee, Shannon, and Lux here with LG Speed and Custom, and in this video we are taking Shannon's boring old Meteor and turning it into a cool family cruiser. So the things we're going to tackle in this video, we're going to do some tires on this car. These boring, skinny white wall radials got to go. We've got some 670/15 bias ply wide whites we're going to put on. We're going to put some 3-inch lowering blocks in the back. We're going to cut 1.5 coils in the front, and that should bring the car 3 inches down. We've got a couple hubcap options to play with. We got some fender skirts at the Portland swap meet that we can try. While I'm doing all that, Shannon's going to do a little bit of maintenance stuff on the car. The sending unit for the gas tank needs to be replaced. We've got a new one, so she's going to change that. We've also picked up some 6-volt 1154 LED bulbs that she's going to put in the original taillights in the back, just to brighten them up a little bit. We'll try them. I've never tried LED bulbs before, but we'll see what happens. So yeah, that's what we're going to do in this video. One of the first things I do before I lower any car is I put a little bit of masking tape on the fenders and then measure our height. So right now, we're at 30 inches. That way, after we're done, we can remeasure the car and see exactly how low it came down. Now that we've got our original ride height figured out, I'm just gonna jack the car up and then we're gonna blow all the wheels off of it, pull one of the U-bolts off, and then go on an adventure. We're gonna take the wheels over to the tire shop and then take the U-bolt over to the spring shop so they can make new U-bolts that are longer. So we got all 4 wheels off and ready to go to the tire shop. Before I leave, I'm gonna blast one of these U-bolts off and take it with us, and then we can stop at the spring shop. I've got this one U-bolt off. It came apart way too easy, which is probably because of the amazing condition of this car. So the reason we need to make these 3 inches longer is because we're putting a 3-inch lowering block in. These are just a set of used blocks that I had kicking around. I think these came from Duck. But anyways, the general theory with a lowering block is you take your U-bolts off here, and here's your leaf spring pad. This is welded to the rear end, and it sits on the leaf spring. You just put this in between. There's a little centering dowel on there that goes in the leaf spring pad, and then the leaf spring itself has a pin in it, and that pin goes in the bottom. And all this does is goes in between and raises the rear end 3 inches higher, which in turn makes the car sit 3 inches lower. You can only go so far before you start running into clearance issues. I measured this car before we took it apart, and from the top of the axle to here, when the car, all the weight is on the car, is 5 inches. So by going 3 inches, we're probably gonna have to trim a little bit of this bump stop off, but that'll be fine. It'll be okay. Got our wheels and tires all loaded up. These are the tires that we're going to be swapping onto the rims. These are just Coker Classics 670/15s. They came with the car when Shannon bought it, and they're in really nice condition still. They're a little bit dirty because the guy had them stored in his carport, so they got some leaves and spiders and stuff on them, but that'll all wash off. There's a tire shop just up the street. I'm going to try them, and hopefully they can do it today. It's Friday, about 10:30 in the morning right now, so hopefully we can get them done today and not have to wait until next week. If they can't do it, my friend Matt, he can change them as well, but he's a little bit of a drive, so hopefully it works out. Dropped the tires off. He figured he could have them done by the end of the day, so that's great. We are now at West Shore Spring and 4x4. They do some cool stuff here. They build a lot of off-road buggies and lift kits, and most importantly, they make U-bolts. So we're gonna get the same dimension U-bolt, just 3 inches longer. There we go, 4 new U-bolts. Made them while we wait. Back at the shop now. I'm gonna blast this other U-bolt out, and then we'll lift the rear end, put our block in place, and put the new U-bolt in. Right after I turn the air compressor back on. There we go, that's better. Okay, with the U-bolts undone, we're just gonna jack the rear end up and then put the blocks in between the spring and the axle. Just sits on the little dowel pin there. Now we just take our U-bolts, our new ones, and put it all back together. I put some anti-seize on these before putting them together. That way if we ever got to take it apart, it's a lot easier. All right, the shocks go right back in their original location because this is all the same. The only thing we've changed is instead of the axle sitting here, the axle now sits up here. I've kept all the old U-bolts in case we ever sell this car one day and somebody wants to be a dork and put it back to stock. They can do that. Back end is done. Let's move on to the front now. So up front, there is numerous ways to lower the front of these cars. You can get dropped uprights, which relocate the spindle further up here. They're like $1,000 though, and that's out of our budget. Another really popular thing is to just replace the factory coil spring with a coil spring from a Ford Aerostar minivan. That'll give you about a 2-inch drop, which in my opinion is not enough. It doesn't really make the car look that much lower. I think you need at least 3 inches. So to do a 3-inch drop, we're gonna cut 1.5 coils. I've done it 100 times. It's like a tried and true method. Works great. I know there's a lot of people that don't believe in cutting coils. They think that cutting coils is bad. I don't agree with that at all. As you cut a coil, the shorter the coil gets, the more the spring rate increases, which improves your handling. It makes the car like less, you know, like a bathtub full of water when you're driving down the road, which these like 40s and 50s Fords are famous for. And also, it's also really common to cut coils like in this industry. Take, you know, John's 50 Fargo back here that we just put this Fat Man Fabrication front end in. It says right in the Fat Man kit that to fine tune your ride height, you just cut coils until you're at the height that you're happy with. As well as like I built some autocross cars and race cars and stuff like that. Same thing, you cut the coils to fine tune your ride height and dial your suspension in. It's a really common thing. There's nothing wrong with it. Don't be afraid to cut your coils. You don't have to buy aftermarket lowering springs. And I almost forgot, there's one more way to lower these cars, which is pretty common, and that is to knock out all these rivets and remove this plate, and then put like 1-inch square tubing in between here. And what that does is drops the coil pocket essentially 1 inch lower, which will make the car sit 1 inch lower. But again, we're just gonna do 1.5 coils because it's the easiest, the cheapest, and it works very well. These cars don't use ball joints. They've got a kingpin through here and they use these trunnions through here. Rather than taking all that apart, we're gonna undo the control arm at the back here with these 4 bolts. We'll put a spring under, or a jack under here to compress the spring, take our shock out, take these 4 bolts out, and then as we slowly let the jack down, it's gonna release the pressure until this comes down and the spring will literally just fall out. All right, so I've moved on to plan B, which is just to take this trunnion apart because that didn't want to come apart. And this was probably easier. Should have just done this to begin with. Might have to take that sway bar off. There we go. To the chop saw. So if we go one coil, puts us here. And then we do another half a coil, puts us here. So we're gonna chop this off right here. And while it's only this much, you gotta consider that the spring is gonna compress a little bit more now. And it usually works out to, in my experience, usually about 3 inches from 1.5 coils. One and a half. Let's go put it back in and then do the same on the other side. Okay, our suspension work is all done. Shannon and Lux are washing hubcaps and cleaning the fender skirts that we got at the Portland swap meet.
Actually, he's cleaning a tricycle.
Oh, he's cleaning a tricycle. We're still waiting for the tire shop to call us, so we can't put it on the ground yet. I'm gonna look at this sending unit. Shannon was having some troubles with it because this bolt pattern is different than the one that's in there. So I'm gonna look into that. And the one that's in there, when she pulled it apart, she said whoever put that one in drilled their own holes. So I'm thinking maybe we can just drill our own holes in this one. We'll take a look at it and see. So this is a new aftermarket replacement tank. And I think the issue, I was just reading about this on the Shoebox Facebook group, is that the new gas tanks use a 5-bolt sending unit and the original ones are a 6-bolt sending unit. So what I'm gonna do is take this gasket that fits this one and lay it over top of this, mark our holes, and drill them. That's what they did on this original, or I shouldn't say original, this other reproduction sending unit that does not work. I don't know if you can hear it making all sorts of angry sounds inside, but we tested it with an ohm meter a while back and it doesn't do anything. So we'll just drill some holes in it like that one and put this one back together. We're gonna have to shorten this arm a bit. It explains on here how to do that. Basically, you just measure how deep into the tank through that hole and it tells you where to cut and bend. New bolt pattern is drilled in there. So now we gotta cut and bend this. So if we stick a tape measure down there, it bottoms out at 7 inches in the tank. And according to our chart here, if our tank is 7 inches deep, we're gonna cut at 5.5 and fold at 4 3/4. So I've marked out 4 3/4, which is our bend. We're gonna bend this first and then we'll cut the end off. I've marked it as well, so. So this is put back together. We folded it at 4 3/4, cut the end off with a pair of side cutters, stuffed it back in. And so if you measure from the top where my thumb is to the bottom of the float, is 7 inches, which is what we measured the tank would be. So I'm just gonna put the gasket back on here and bolt it back in. So I've got this all back together now, and I just turned the key on, and our gauge is going up very slowly, but it is going up, which is an improvement over what the old one did, which was absolutely nothing. So how accurate this gauge is, that's gonna be a whole other question. The 47 sitting out there, it has a brand new sending unit in it as well, and it is incredibly inaccurate. Fuel gauge is done. The 6-volt LED taillights, they turned out to be a bust. They don't work. They don't do anything at all. So I don't know if they're maybe 12-volt ones that got labeled wrong or what. I haven't looked into it any further. We just put the regular incandescent bulbs back in it. So hopefully I don't know, that sucks. They were 22 bucks. So hopefully that wasn't just a waste. While we're waiting for the tire shop, which shouldn't be too long. They called me about a half an hour ago and asked about balancing. So they should be done soon. Shannon's got a set of Lancer caps all cleaned up, and she washed the fender skirts. While I was sitting here bored waiting for the tire shop, I threw a little gray primer on there and then got even more bored and found a can of green. It's definitely not the right green, but it's a closer match than the red that they were. So it's just temporary anyways. We'll eventually get those color matched to the car. So yeah, just waiting on the tire shop now. We got our new shoes. Shannon and Lux are having a nap right now. Well, Lux is having a nap, so I'm gonna clean these up with a little bit of spray nine and the garden hose. Shannon doesn't want to, she wants me to wait until she's back from Lux's nap to set the car on the ground, so that'll keep me occupied. All right, Shannon's back. Let's put this thing on the ground and see what it looks like.
Should we put the hub caps on first? Both are classics.
Yeah! That's amazing.
I think the front still needs to settle.
Yeah, take it for a drive around the parking lot, and the front should, well, the whole thing will settle a little bit, then we'll remeasure it. Way better. What do you think, Lex? Does Mom's car look maybe way better now? Okay, we were at 30 inches before, and now we are at 28 inches. So that came down 2 inches. However, we are touching the bump stop. So I think if we take the bump stop out, it will settle just a little bit more. Let's go look at the back. 24 inches before, and we were at like 21 and a quarter now. I will call it 21. So yeah, that came down 3 inches. And how close are we to the bump stops back here? pretty, we got about an inch travel, so we'll probably trim those too, because I think with everyone in the car, they'll probably touch. Try these fender skirts. If it sits low enough with the fender skirts, we might not even need to put hubcaps on the back.
I need a screwdriver to get dirt out.
Okay, other than the color definitely not matching, I think we can probably skip with the hubcap on the back, which I'm okay with, because it always like makes me nervous running a hubcap and a fender skirt at the same time in case the hubcap ever comes off and gets stuck in there and it'll destroy your tire. Okay, as soon as we get the hubcap on, we're gonna go for a cruise to the beach. What do you think, Lex? Mom's car is pretty cool now. Beach time!
Your beach time, baby?
Woo! All right, well, we got back from the beach late last night. Car worked out great. It steers a lot easier with the bias ply tires, like getting in and out of like parking lots and parallel parking and stuff like that. It's a lot easier to turn the wheel than it was with the radials, which if you'll remember back to the first video, was this car, Shannon had a bit of an issue parallel parking it. So hopefully that's resolved now. But man, what a difference. It's incredible what just proper wheels and tires and changing the stance will do to a car just to transform it to a whole nother level. So obviously we got to color match these fender skirts a little bit better. That was a experiment gone wrong, but we can do that. We'll get some Sea Breeze green mixed up, and I think I'd like to power polish this car, maybe put some lake pipes on it. Shannon definitely wants it a bit louder. She's saying that people don't hear her pulling in and out of parking lots, and you know, loud pipes save lives. So that's probably going to be a upcoming thing on this car. I'm trying to convince her to take the bumperettes off just to clean up the front a little bit. Don't have these big buck teeth things blocking that beautiful grill, but you know, that's all minor cosmetic stuff. So anyways, thanks everybody for watching. If you want to support this channel, please check out the website, lgspeedcustom.com, and get yourself some LG Speed and Custom merch. Thanks to everybody who got merch on the last video. Really appreciate that. And yeah, let me know in the comments what you think about this. We'll see you guys on the next video. Talk to you later.